This week's parsha mentions a bunch of psukim that are of my favorites in all of the Torah. It starts out, Ki ha-mitzvah hazot asher anochi mitzavcha hayom lo nifleiti mimcha v'lo rechokati lo b'shamayim hi lemor mi ya'aleh lanu hashamayima yikachea lanu v'yashmeinu ota v'nasena v'lo me'ever layam hu lemor mi ya'avor lanu el ever hayam v'yikachea lanu v'yashmeinu ota v'nasena ki karov elecha hadavar ma'od v'picha u'v'mancha las. From a Pshat perspective, these psukim are basically saying that the Torah is attainable. It's not far, it's not in the heavens, it's not Me'ever Layam, it's right next door, it's right in front of you. It's very, very attainable. It's almost like a pep talk. Like, don't think that learning Torah is beyond your capabilities. And don't think that understanding it is difficult. However, when you look in the Gemara, the rabbis, very importantly, wanted to understate a little bit of that simplicity. And in the Gemara in Eruvin, Daf Nun Hey, Ruth, if you remember, it says, Lo b'shamayim hi v'lo me'ever layam. Lo b'shamayim hi, she'im b'shamayim hi, ata tzarich la'alot achareh. Ve'im me'ever layam hi, ata tzarich la'avor achareh. The Gemara says, in a very typical Gemara fashion, it says it's lo b'shamayim. But what does that mean? That if it were b'shamayim, you would have to go as far as you can to reach it. And if it were me'ever layam, you would have to struggle to get through the waters to understand it. And what the Gemara is trying to say from this is that in order to understand the Torah, almost the opposite of what the Torah says, you have to work very, very, very hard to get there. The Gemara continues, and as usual in the Gemara, there's another opinion. Rava Amar lo b'shamayim hi, lo timtza b'mi shemagbiya da'ato aleha kishamayim, v'lo timtza b'mi shemarchiv da'ato alav kayam. Understanding the word shamayim and yam, the Gemara interprets, Rava says, the Torah is not found by one who thinks that his mind is as great as the heavens, and it's not found in one who thinks that his mind is as broad as the yam. And this message of the Gemara is trying to say that if you think you know it all, then you really don't. So I want to first begin with the message of the Pshat of this Gemara, of the Psukim. The Pshat of the Psukim, to go back, we have three interpretations. The Pshat, which seems to indicate it's very easily accessible. The first opinion of the Gemara, which seems to say you have to work very, very hard to get it. And the last opinion, which is, if you are very smart, don't let it get to your head, because then you really won't understand properly. So I want to start with a story of something that happened at the beginning of this year that was earlier referenced. But I'll tell the story a little bit more in depth of the way I heard it. In the beginning of the year, Ruth, or I think the whole Can family, came to the shul, to our shul. And it happened to be the one Shabbat I got up to talk about the Daf Yomi and what I was doing and the importance of it for women. And from what I understood, Halle said to her mother, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mom, why don't you go to that shiur? It sounds like something you would like to do. Now, most women that I spoke to about the Daf Yomi shiur, some of you were in the room, looked at me and said, Daf Yomi? Every day? Are you out of your mind? How can I do that? It's totally unattainable. But Halle, in her very simplistic style, said, oh, that seems reasonable, Mom. Why don't you do that? Of course, Ruth had never learned Gemara before in any way. And Ruth began attending the shiur and made that leap to say, okay, this is attainable. And I think that that's really what the Psukim are saying. And I think your mother showed you by example that anything that you want to do is really attainable. And the other thing, in taking this message further, Ruth is the one woman in my shiur, no offense to any of the other women who are excellent attendees to the shiur, Ruth has not missed a day except for when she was in Chutz La'aretz, correct me if I'm wrong, right? Other than that, has not missed a single day except for when being Me'ever Layam made it impossible for her to get there. And that leads me to the point that the Gemara makes, which is that on the one hand, I pose them as if they contradict each other, but really they work together. The Torah is very, very attainable. However, in order to get there, you need to put in a lot of effort. And that is something that I think both your parents represent their models. That they, as role models, number one, they realize that nothing is unattainable. Number two, they realize that in order to attain things, great efforts are needed. And on the third point, despite their brilliant minds and brilliant capabilities and wonderful abilities to put to work put to action their thoughts and their efforts, they also have not let it get to their heads. They're lo b'shamayim hi, I think the most down-to-earth people that we know. And they will understand the efforts needed to invest in order to accomplish their goals. Halle, I've had the pleasure of learning with you this year. It really was a pleasure. And I noticed in having developed a relationship with you that you really have these qualities of your parents. You are also, as your mother, are the first one to come to class every week. And you put in a lot of effort, including asking lots of good questions in order to make sure that you understand everything that we're learning. And yet, in your bright and excellent capabilities, you're very unassuming. Very simple. You don't have any airs about you, about your intellect. So we're all very proud of all you've accomplished until now. And we're looking forward to watching you grow in Torah, and Mitzvot, and Gilu Chasadim. And always remember that lo b'shamayim hi, v'lo ma'ever layam hi, ela karov elecha hadavar ma'od b'picha u'b'avcha la'asoto. Mazal tov.